The train that carried the city's summer volunteers to the valley screeched like a tired gull before settling under a coughing plume of steam. When the doors slid open, a dozen teenagers in matching orange shirts spilled onto the cracked platform, their chatter louder than the cicadas. They were here for Rural Regeneration Week, a brochure bright program promising resume sparkle, wholesome blisters, and the photo ops of doing good. Just imagine they would plant a few seedlings, snap a few selfies, and be back in their apartments before their phone batteries dipped below half. Only one name had stuck in their memory from the orientation packets: Elder Gardener Aphon Guider, local legend. They pictured a kindly senior leaning on a hoe, perhaps with interesting war stories or folklore to pad the volunteer hour. What they found at the valley's only bus stop was not a man, but a note tacked to a wooden post. "Follow the stone path past the willow. I'll meet you by the glass house. Keep your steps quiet. The ground is listening." "Ground is listening," snorted Logan, the de facto influencer of the group, phone already set to cinematic mode. "Someone's been sipping the organic fertilizer." But they followed. The stone path threaded through fields that looked half asleep, furrows slouching, compost heaps steaming gently, and rows of seedlings that seemed to pause mid-stretch as soon as the newcomers passed. The sky, swollen with late spring warmth, hung so low it felt like another field inverted above them, silver clouds plowed by invisible oxen. The glass house appeared suddenly, its panes clouded by a patina of green that suggested moss, algae, or simply the breath of decades. An elderly figure knelt inside, visible through a crooked door left ajar. The volunteers clustered outside, half expectant, half impatient. He did not rise to greet them. Instead, he hummed. The sound floated from his chest like a low flute, rising and dipping through scales no pop song had ever dared. Within the scattered seed trays lining the floor, something stirred. Tiny beads of hardness cracked, split, and unfurled tentative green tongues that licked the air. Shoots sprang up, taller than they had any right to be. Leaves uncorked, veins illuminated like stained glass held against sunlight. A cluster of seedlings that had looked parched and papery only moments ago now stood stout, already shading their weaker siblings. Mia, the group's aspiring botanist, had been leaning in through the doorframe and nearly toppled forward. "Did everyone see?" "Dude's got a special fertilizer," Logan said, though the lens of his phone trembled. "Some hydroponic insta-growth thing." The elderly gardener rose slowly, joints crackling like peppercorns in a pan. His eyes glittered with mischief beneath white eyebrows so wild they might themselves have been trimmed from a hedge. "Welcome, I am a fawn. You're precisely on time. Plants obey their clocks more faithfully than trains, so it's important that we begin." "Sir," Mia ventured, "how did you—" "Later," a fawn interrupted gently. "Miracles are best tasted after the mundane. Today's tasks first. Clearing the north plot, repairing irrigation lines, labeling, recording. Seeds come last," the teen's muffled groans. Tools were distributed. A wheelbarrow with a wobbly wheel, spades that looked forged before any of them were born, hoes whose handles bore thumbprints worn smooth by habit. Logan weighed a shovel in his hand as though expecting it to self-propel. Nothing happened. They set to work. The north plot lay at the foot of an old orchard, where gnarled apple trees hunched like arthritic sentinels. The soil was heavy, unforgiving. Every shovelful clung stubbornly, like wet clay refusing to leave its cradle. Within half an hour, sweat mapped their spines. Bright shirts dulled by dust. A fawn patrolled quietly, offering direction in murmurs, pausing occasionally to test the soil with bare fingers or to re-angle a shovel so its edge sliced truthfully rather than skidded. He said little else. What he did do, often almost absent-mindedly, was hum. Each time the melody slipped from his lips, something unexpected occurred on the edges of the volunteer's vision. A patch of forgotten ground cover would suddenly carpet itself in fresh clover. Thorny brambles parted, exposing dormant roses that threw out buds as though surprised awake from a centuries-long nap. Once, a single note seemed to ripple across the compost heap, causing steam to billow and a gentle sigh and a colony of earthworms to surface briefly, shining like pink embroidery in the dark mulch. The teens exchanged looks, equal parts astonishment and greed. If he could conjure growth with a tune, why were they sweating through their shirts? It's during the midday break, they cornered him under the orchard's largest tree. "What's the secret?" Logan asked, skipping courtesy as easily as a stone across water. "Is it like sub-audible frequencies? People pay thousands for tech that accelerates germination." Afon bit into a modest sandwich, chewing thoughtfully before replying. Every time an elderly gardener hums, forgotten seeds sprout instantly, teaching impatient youths the virtue of slow care despite sudden miracles. He said it plainly, as though quoting a rule carved in bedrock. Uh-huh, Logan said, eyes narrowing. So, magic. Everything's magic until you understand it, Afan answered. And once you understand it fully, it becomes something better, responsibility. Mia tried a calmer approach. Can anyone learn the humming, I mean? Afan sipped water. Anyone willing to listen deeply to seed, soil, their own breath. But listening is harder than humming. No one knew how to respond. He clapped dusty hands and announced that lunch was over. That afternoon, they repaired an irrigation line sneaking from a spring. The pipe leaked in a dozen places, each hole a tiny fountain diamonding in sunshine. Fixing it required patience, heating patches of resin, aligning, waiting for cooling. Logan seethed quietly. He pulled out his phone, no signal, no distraction. In frustration, he struck the pipe with the flat of his palm. Water spurted and soaked his jeans. Afon hummed. The water calmed as if remembering to flow instead of sputter. With practiced ease, he sealed the last fissure. He said nothing, but his eyes seemed to ask Logan whether he had learned whatever lesson the pipe was offering. By evening, the teens' aunts, bright as marigolds, looked like they'd been uprooted and planted twice. But dinner at the communal farmhouse revived them. Stewed vegetables, crusty bread, orchard cider. At dusk, they gathered outside where fireflies echoed the first timid stars. iPhone produced a cloth pouch. Seed pods rattled inside. He called each volunteer by name and handed them a few seeds, a personal allotment. These are from plants thought lost, he said. Some seeds spent decades in corners of forgotten barns, folded inside books or wedged between floorboards. They wait well. You will each plant yours at dawn. Tonight, however, sleep. Seeds dream alongside us. Most obeyed, collapsing into bunks. A few lingered by candlelight, speculating. Logan argued that the seeds must be genetically engineered. Another claimed hidden speakers might be emitting frequencies every time a fawn hummed. Mia said little, her fingers stroking her pouch like a worry stone. Morning came wreathed in mist. Afan met them at the plot near the glasshouse. Each volunteer found a stake bearing their initials. Their job was simple: dig a small bed, sow their seeds, record the location in a logbook. Afterward, they would follow a schedule: watering, weeding, shading, fertilizing, daily observation. Afan emphasized the logbook. A gardener forgets nothing but forgives everything, he said. Write as though the soil will read your words once we're gone. They planted. Some took care to orient seeds point up, gently firming the soil. Others, bored or skeptical, tossed them in and patted the earth like men dusting off their hands after casual applause. The week unfolded in a rhythm of labor. Dawn coolness, tool song, sun crescendo, rest, evening, hush. Afon's humming became familiar, not background, but heartbeat. Shoots responded under his tune, yes, but they did not leap instantly to full harvest. The immediate miracles the teens had witnessed on day one proved to be rarer than rumored. More often, the humming coaxed subtle progress, leaves unrolling an hour sooner than usual, buds plumping overnight instead of over days. It was cheat codes turned to gentle nudges, not warp speed. And the volunteers learned that nudges still required long hours of watering, mulching, thinning. They weeded under heat that bleached their shirts and thinking. They staked vines that collapsed in storms. They logged failures, seedlings felled by cutworms, sprouts fried by unexpected frost. Afan never scolded. He only hummed, sometimes with a smile, sometimes with notes so minor they sounded like questions held too long. Midweek tension surfaced. Logan's plot remained bare soil, no signs of life. Mia's showed seedlings but yellowing. Others boasted shy green points. Logan accused Afan of giving him dud seeds. In the orchard clearing, he confronted the gardener. "I've done everything in your book," Logan said, thrusting his log. "Watered precisely, weeded, waited. I know you can make them sprout," he gestured sharply. "So do it." Afan considered the young man's square shoulders sagging under frustration. "You wish for proof rather than partnership," he said. "Tell me, if your seeds sprout because I hume for them, whose crop will it be?" "I don't care. I just want results." "Then you don't want a garden," Afan replied. "You want an illusion." Logan's cheeks flared. The orchard, motionless seconds ago, rustled. The teenagers watching held breath. Afon did not hum. Instead, he extended a hand toward Logan's sore plot, palm up, as though offering invisible seeds. "The ground is listening," he whispered. "Say what you need to say." Logan swallowed. Mockery failed him. Sarcasm slipped off the moment like water off wax. At last he murmured, "I'm afraid I'm wasting my time." The earth remained earth, no miracle. Yet something inside Logan's chest loosened, like soil after rain. That night, thunderheads marched across the ridge. Rain hammered tin roofs, rattled windows, and played timpani on the greenhouse panes. At dawn, volunteers discovered that half the North Plot had flooded. Furrows were soup, labels floated like ghost sails. Logan's stake had fallen. Emergency work began. Digging trenches, diverting water, reshaping beds. Through it all, Afon hummed, not the bright melodies of sunlit growth, but a sturdier, bass-heavy refrain that seemed to shore up the volunteers' spirits. They toiled until the sun climbed clear of clouds, panting like hounds. The soil settled. Inspecting damage later, Logan knelt where his stake had been. Afon joined him. The old man pressed fingers an inch into the muck and smiled softly. "Feel," he said. Logan followed suit. His fingertips brushed a firmness like folded paper under thin soil. Together, they cleared a thumbnail-sized sprout. Leaves curled tight as fists, yet undeniably alive. "It listened," Logan breathed. "It did," Afon agreed, helping the boy replace the stake. "Now help it listen further. Song alone is not enough. The body must echo." From then on, Logan arrived first each morning. He worked silently, sometimes humming low, sometimes simply breathing in cadence with the breeze. He logged diligently. He asked Mia questions, apologized for earlier arrogance. In return, she showed him how to check pH levels, how to brew compost tea that smelled atrocious but saved his seedlings. Their plants began to thrive slowly, yes, but undeniably. The week extended into 2, then 3, because not one volunteer wanted to leave when the official program ended. They petitioned for extensions, citing project completion requirements. Afon laughed privately. Every garden was an unfinished sentence, he said. Still, he welcomed their lingering. Under moonlight, one crisp evening, Afon gathered them in the glass house for what he called the second sowing. On the table lay trays of seeds, heirloom tomatoes, blue corn, night-blooming jasmine. He explained that these would be distributed to neighboring farms and schools, ensuring the valley's larder and legend would both multiply. "But they will need caretakers," he said, gaze sweeping across youthful faces, bronzed now by honest sun. Sarah, the shyest volunteer, raised a hand. "Would humming be part of the caretaking?" Afon considered. "If you hum and the seeds recognize your voice, they may answer, or they may ask you to learn new tunes. Either way, learn their language instead of forcing yours upon them." Mia asked, "How did you learn?" "By failing," he said. "I was not always patient. I chased quick harvests until the soil starved. One season, in anger, I played my grandmother's lullaby on a flute while stomping through a ruined field. To my horror and wonder, sprouts erupted beneath my boots, but they withered soon after because I had not prepared the ground. They taught me that miracles reveal possibility, not completion." The teens let his words settle like compost enriching the silence. Towards the end of their extended stay, the valley hosted its annual market fair. The volunteers decided to present produce from their plots. Small baskets of lettuce, handfuls of beans, bouquets of herbs. Logan contributed 3 perfect radishes, a modest yield, but to him they burned brighter than trophies. Each item bore labels handwritten in the logbook script they'd honed. At the fair, townspeople marveled at the quality, the variety. Sure, they'd tasted lettuce before, but not lettuce that seemed to remember rainfall in its veins, or beans that snapped like polite applause. Children argued over who got to hold the jasmine pot, whose buds opened the moment a fawn hummed a single note. The mayor inquired about exporting methods. Ofan redirected him to the teenagers. "These gardeners," he said, "hold the method. Ask them. They listen better than I do now." Conversations sparked. Urban cafes requesting seed stock, schools seeking garden curriculum, elderly locals volunteering to teach the volunteers family recipes worthy of such produce. Partnerships sprouted. The night after the fair, under lantern light between the orchard rows, Afon gathered the group for what felt like a farewell, though none dared call it that. He produced small tin boxes, each lightly embossed with a seedling motif, and passed them to the youths. Inside each box rested a single seed, large, dark, glossy. Ma melon, Afan said, rare. Some say extinct. I found a handful in a disused well decades ago, kept them sleeping until I met growers who understood lullabies. Plant when you're ready, perhaps not tomorrow, perhaps not in this valley. Plant where care is needed more than proof. Logan turned the seed in his palm. And if it never sprouts, then it remains a promise, still valuable, Afan replied. After the volunteers dispersed to pack, Mia lingered. Will the valley miss your humming when you're gone someday? Afan smiled, eyes crinkling like dry leaves folding into themselves. The valley hums already. Streams, wind, bees, roots rubbing stone. I merely harmonize. Listen long enough, you'll do the same. On departure morning, the teenagers walked the stone path in the opposite direction. Boots stained, arms stronger, the train waited. Before boarding, they heard a familiar hum riding the wind. They turned. A fawn stood by the willow, hands clasped behind his back. As he held a final note, the willow's catkins burst, scattering silver fuzz across the platform like snow caught in sunrise. No one reached for their phones first. Instead, they watched, breathing the note into memory. Then Logan, shyly at first but steadying, hummed the note back. Mia joined, adjusting pitch. Others followed until a small chorus answered the valley's music. The train's whistle cut in, impatient. They boarded, laden with tin boxes and sun-cured confidence. Through the window, they saw a fawn not waving, but tending to a new sapling near the tracks, a slick of green and gravel. Years would pass. Some of those youths would sit behind screens, some behind steering wheels, one behind a teacher's desk, moon melon seeds still sleeping in their boxes, until one day, a hymn, half remembered, slipped from their lips and woke something in the soil at their feet. Not every seed would sprout instantly. Most would take proper time, cracking, pushing, climbing through darkness toward patient light. And that was fine, for they had learned in a valley lined with willows and watched by a hum that sudden miracles are invitations, not shortcuts, and that the truest harvest is the long conversation between tenderness and time.